Hello, a very good morning to all of you. Today's topic of discussion is domestic violence. We all know that domestic violence is a very common thing in our society. It is a very serious human rights issue. We all know that in the name of violence, a lots of atrocities are committed on women, which results into physical and mental harm to our women. Though our constitution has provided for fundamental rights, and if we look upon the preamble of our constitution, we find that it begins with the word "We the people of India." So, the Constitution of India does not discriminate between men and women. All the rights which are guaranteed to men are also available to women. But because of the violence, women are not able to enjoy the fundamental rights which are given to them by the Constitution of India. So this violence which is perpetrated against women is very much the negation of the fundamental rights to women. Though this domestic violence against women has been very prevalent in our society, but, but it has always been in secrecy and kept in isolation. The women do not want to talk about the domestic violence which is perpetrated against them by the domestic relations or which is perpetrated within the domestic boundaries in which women are living. Out of shame, out of a positive regard for themselves, and because of the lack of support system which a woman does not have in Indian families, she is not able to report this violence. So, though the Constitution provides a number of fundamental rights stretching from Article 14 to Article 32, uh, like right to equality, right of prohibition against discrimination, right against exploitation, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to work. So, all kinds of rights are provided to women. But so far as the right to life with dignity is concerned, it is very much denied to women. Though we have entered into 21st century, we are talking about becoming the Vishwagurus. We are Mahashakti, want to be in future times. But if you look at the position of our women, they are still facing indignities in their life. So this domestic violence stretches in the Indian society, crossing all the boundaries. When I'm saying boundaries, it means boundaries of society, boundaries of geography, boundaries of economy, boundaries of caste, boundaries of religion. It does not matter to which caste a woman belongs to which religion she belongs to, from which strata of society she comes, whether she is educated, uneducated, literate, or illiterate, all the women face violence within the domestic relations. So this violence against women has been the negation of human rights to her. If we see the legal position before 2005, we find that there was no law defining in legal terms the meaning of domestic violence. Very first time the attempt was made by the Domestic Violence Act 2005 to define the act of domestic violence. What is the meaning of domestic violence? Because all the cases which were coming before the courts, before the enactment of this act, the view of the court was that in the domestic life or in the daily life, the women face violence, and it is nothing very important. These are the wear and tear of daily life. If you have entered into the domestic relations in a matrimonial home, you are bound to bear the atrocity, the indignities, the humiliations that come with the marriage institution. So that is a very hard fact of society which all of us do not agree to. But it is a grim reality of our society. So I would like to talk about the background of this act, how this act came into being. So the United Nations Committee on Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is known by the name of CEDAW, in a general recommendation 12 1989 recommended that state parties should act to protect women against violence of any kind, especially that acting within the especially that occurring within the family. The Vienna Accord of 1994, Beijing Declaration, and the Platform for Action 1995 have accepted that domestic violence is very much prevalent in our society. So whether we are talking about India or whether we look at the position of women in USA, UK, or Australia, or anywhere in the world, we find the women is facing violence in every society. Whether a woman is Muslim, she is a Christian, she is a Hindu, it does not matter. Every woman is subjected to same kind of violence. So this fact has very much been recognized on the international arena by the international conventions and declarations. So this Vienna Accord of 1994 and the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action 1995 also accepted this fact that domestic violence is very much prevalent in society across the world. And what was the tragedy that though the domestic violence was there, especially if we talk about the position in India, though it is not so that the remedies were not available where the women are being tortured within the domestic relation. They had the remedy. They had the remedy in the civil laws, in the personal laws, in the criminal laws, but it is all fraught with some kind of difficulty. Like if you go for remedies in civil law, ultimately you have to snap your ties with the familiar relations. You have to go for a divorce, and you have the fear of losing the custody of your children if you are not earning much, if your economic position is not very good, then the custody of children may not be given to you. So in civil law, there was the problem of maintenance, problem of custody of children, because of which women didn't prefer to go for remedy before the court of law. They fear to knock the doors of justice. And if you look at the criminal law, the problem is that if you have to start moving the criminal justice administration for that, you have to file an FIR. So we all know what is the position of police in our society and how much dreadful it is for a common person to go to the police station to lodge an FIR, even though he or she is facing violence, serious violence in the home. So that always gives a setback to women if she is facing a violence and still cannot approach to the authorities for lodging the FIR. Then, besides this police fear, there was also a problem of evidence. If the violence is being committed within the four walls of your house, there are lack of evidences. Who are going to say that the crime has been committed against you or the violence is being perpetrated? So the problem of witnesses are there, problems of evidences are there, and then you need to show the physical scare also. So if you are having the marks of violence on your body, only then you can prove in the court that you have been subjected to violence. But if there are psychological scares, there are some kinds of mental atrocities that are being committed on you, then you don't have any evidence to prove that you are being subjected to violence. So in criminal law, there was the problem of giving of evidence as well as of producing witnesses, because witnesses sometimes become hostile also. So though the remedy was available in civil law and criminal law, but it was quite difficult for a common woman to knock the doors of justice or to approach before the authorities for the redressal of her grievances. So very first time this particular act was thought of, where it was thought that such kind of remedy should be provided where women need not go to the police station. There must be some other authorities, some other kind of mechanism to whom a woman can report to in case of violence if it is being perpetrated against her. So this process was initiated itself in 2002 when the draft was made for the protection of domestic violence bill by the Lawyers Collective and organization. And National Commission of Women also framed the draft legislation to protect the women from domestic violence. But that could not see the light. But ultimately, in 2005, the Domestic Violence Bill was introduced on 22 August 2005, and this bill was passed in Lok Sabha on 24th of August 2005 and by the Rajya Sabha on 29th of August 2005. And ultimately, this bill received the assent of the President on 13th of September 2005, and ultimately it became enforceable in 2006 October. So domestic violence is undoubtedly a human rights issue, and it gives a serious blow to growth and development. Because if a woman is facing violence, then she may not be able to work. She may not be able to cooperate or contribute in the growth and development of the country. So it is not only a kind of personal loss to her, but this violence causes loss to the society and to the nation as well. And then this domestic violence not only affects the woman who is facing violence, but also her near and dear ones, her support system, her children, who are also affected by the scars of, by the bonds of domestic violence. So this phenomena of domestic violence is widely prevalent in society, but it is largely invisible public domain. And what should I say that when a woman is subjected to cruelty by her husband or his relative, one of the remedies uh, which was available to her under criminal law is approaching to police station by lodging an FIR section 498A, where for the first time the mental cruelty was defined. So this amendment in the Indian Penal Code came in 1983, whereby the term cruelty was defined. And if a woman is being subjected to any kind of cruelty, whether it is physical or mental, then she can approach to the authorities for the redressal of her grievances. But there's the same problem was there of the evidence and the witnesses. And then this section 498A has also become so much infamous. It is called the a tool of torture in the hands of women. It has been so much criticized. But what I would like to say, and I would like to ask the question that how many women are aware of the law? How many women want to assert their rights or want to go for the redressal of the grievances, either due to lack of education or due to lack of uh, poor economic or due to lack of economic support system that they do not have if they are not working and if they do not come from a healthy economic background. So therefore this proposed law tries to guarantee the rights which are ensured under the Constitution of India. That is Article 14 talks about right to equality. Under Article 14, we have right to prohibition against discrimination. Then certain special laws can be made for the protection of women and children under Article 15, Clause 3 of the Constitution. And so this particular act of domestic violence enjoys the constitutional status because it has been passed in furtherance of exercise of power by Parliament under Article 15, Clause 3 of the Constitution, and it provides the civil remedy. So, for if we talk about the rights which are available, the remedies available under the Act, they are substantive in nature, but and they belong to the civil law or of civil nature. But if you look at the procedure, Section 28 of the Act says that whatever proceedings are taken for the enforcement of the rights or for the redressal of grievances under Section 12, under Section 18, and Rule 23 of the Act, all these proceedings will be governed by the procedure of Criminal Procedure Code. So this Domestic Violence Act provides a number of remedies. besides it describing what is the meaning of domestic violence. And under section 3, it gives a very, very wide definition of domestic violence. It says that this domestic violence can be physical, it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be verbal also. So a very, very wide and extensive definition of domestic violence has been given under section 3 of the Act. Then certain kind of authorities have been created, like the Office of Protection Officer is there, to whom uh, the complaint of domestic violence can be made. Like FIR, there is provision of DIR, Domestic Incident Report. In case the violence has been committed, then the complaint can be filed under Section 12 of the Act in the name of DIR. So this DIR can be given to the service provider, it can be given to the protection officer, or to any NGO. If you are having any NGO working near your home, you can approach that. Or if you have access to any national, non-governmental organization, many associations are there which are working for the redressal of the grievances of women. If you have can approach to them, there also this DIR can be filed. And the remedy which is provided is very, very uh, very, very efficient and very, very speedy, because within 3 days the cognizance is to be taken and hearing has to begin. But what is the positive point about this act is that, like civil law, it doesn't talk about divorce at the one hand. At an instance, it doesn't talk about the taboo. That if you are complaining about domestic violence, does not mean that you are going to lose your relations and you will lose the custody of your children. It's not like that. In the section 14 of the Act, it talks about the provision for the counseling. If the complaint has been made, further counseling will be done between the husband and wife, and it will be seen why the differences are there, whether this can be reconciled or not, and if and this can be done at any stage of the proceeding. And if the conciliation fails, if the counseling fails, only then the case will be registered and the proceedings will go on. So for the purpose of having a case in the Domestic Violence Act, we need to know certain things. Who can be aggrieved person, who can be respondent, who can claim remedy under this particular act. So far as the aggrieved woman is concerned, its definition is given under section 2A of the act, which says that any woman of any age can approach to court, that is to the magistrate court, because that is the court to which the power has been given to register the case. Because it is a lower level court and many women can have access to this court. So under section 12, a complaint of domestic violence can be made by a woman of any age. And even a child who is being subjected to violence, whether male or female, below 18 years of age, he or she can also approach to the court through her parents, to her or his parents, or through the any friend, for the redressal of the grievances in case of the domestic violence. So this flora is available not only to the women as such, but to their children also. And this particular act also covers those relations which are non-matrimonial in nature. If there is no proper marriage, if the relationship is like the marriage-like relationship, or the women in the bigamous relationship, the women who are caught in a fraudulent marriage, in case of bigamous marriage, they can also have the advantage of this act of 2005. So far as the aggrieved woman is concerned, the woman of any age can approach to the court for the redressal of her grievance. Now the question is, who can be respondent, against whom the act can be filed. The act of perpetration of violence can be filed, or the complaint can be filed. Section 2Q defines the respondent. Initially, when the act was made in 2005, it was thought that it will protect the woman against men. So, what was the understanding? What was the interpretation that who can approach to the court in case of violence? It was that only the remedies were available to women against men. But now this position is changed in 2017. Now, any person can be a respondent, whether male or female. Though initially, through the interpretation, there are various judgments where through the interpretation it was laid down that not only the case can be filed against the husband or the male relative, but the female relatives also, or the male partner or the relatives of the male partner. But after 2017, this position has been made clear that now the cases can be filed against the female relatives of the husband also, or female relatives of the male partner also. So this name of this case was Harsura versus Harsura, which was decided by the Supreme Court in 2017. So this is the aggrieved person and the respondent. Now what they have to prove? It is to be proved that there was a domestic relationship. So what is the meaning of domestic relationship? That is given in the section 2F of the Act. Domestic relationship means a relationship where persons have lived together under a shared household. It means they were living at any point of time under the same residence, in the same residence. And shared household where the persons are living together, it does not mean that it should be their own house. It can be a tenanted house or it can be a rented house. And this the definition of shared household is given in section 2S of the Domestic Violence Act 2005. So who can file a complaint? Any woman who is accused of domestic violence against any person living in domestic relationship under a shared household. Now, what is the procedure? What is the process for approaching and for filing the complaint of domestic violence? I already told you about the domestic incident report that can be given. It can be given to the magistrate, it can be given to the police officer, it can be given to the protection officer, it can be given to the service provider, or it may be given to the NGOs who are working in the vicinity. So this Domestic Violence Act covers all kinds of relationship with the abusers. I already told you whether it's a bigamous marriage, whether it's a fraudulent marriage, whether it is a marriage-like relationship only. So all women can have the advantage of this particular act. Now, what are the remedies? What are the forums available under this particular act? So one of the foremost right that is given is under section 17 of the act, that right to reside in the household. Because in case of violence, the first problem that a woman has to face is that of being thrown out of the house. And in hours of distress, she doesn't have any place to go for seeking roof on her head. So this particular act under section 17 grants right to reside in the same household. The perpetrator of violence, the respondent, cannot evict a woman from the house in which she is living after the marriage has happened to her. Then various other kinds of remedies are given from section 18 to 23. Section 18 talks about the protection order. The magistrate can pass a number of protection orders in order to stop uh, immediate violence against the woman. It may also prohibit him from visiting rights to the father. He may not contact his child. He should not go to the school to disturb the child where he is studying. In the name of protection order, such orders can be passed that he cannot contact the woman neither through email nor phone nor by any other mode, nor any of her relative through whom he can approach her. Then he can also be stopped from holding the property. He will be restrained from closing the bank accounts, and he may be stopped from restricting the woman from operating the account if it is joint in nature. So various kinds of protection orders can be issued under this particular act. And then there is residence order. If he is not having his own house, then he has to give a house on rent where a woman can live, so long as the case is on and even after also. So this protection order can be for right to residence can be given, right of maintenance is there, custody orders can be passed, compensation can be given. Then under section 23, ex parte order or interim order can also be passed. So various kinds of remedies and redressal have been given under this particular act in order to provide immediate and emergent relief to the women who are facing domestic violence. Then, if any violation takes place of this protection order or any of the order passed by the magistrate, then a criminal case can be filed under section 31 of the Act, which is a penalty provision. The offense is non-bailable and cognizable. The punishment is 1 year imprisonment and 20,000 rupees of fine. So, in case of breach of any protection order, the arrest order can be issued and immediately at the same time a case can be filed under IPC also, especially under section 498A of the Act. So this is the procedure, and if a person is aggrieved, not satisfied with the order of the magistrate, one can go to the appeal to the session court under section 29 of the Act. So this is the overall structure of the act, and there are the creation of the office of a protection officer. Duties have been enshrined upon the protection officer, upon the service providers, upon the government also. Under section 11 of the act, central government and state governments are responsible for making publicity to the act and for taking measures in order to make this particular act very, very effective. So, if we look at the overall framework of the Act, we find that this Domestic Violence Act 2005 is very, very effective remedy, very, very effective and speedy remedy which a woman can use in the wake of violence if it is committed within the presence of the house or if any person who are having the domestic relations with her, and not even domestic relationship. Beyond that, also, if a woman is having any kind of relationship with a man and there she is being subjected to violence, she can take advantage of this particular act. So, in this lecture, I will talk about this thing only. In the next lecture, I may be talking about the causes of violence, why the women are subjected to violence, and what are the other laws that are there to protect the rights of women. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much.